In our last video, we learned how to develop an econometric model when we wanted to find out the effect of income on consumption expenditure. And our econometric model was a two-variable model consisting of expenditure and income. So expenditure was denoted by Y and income was denoted by X. We also learned the intercept and the slope of income, where we explain that the intercept is the value of Y when X is 0. And then we went further to explain the coefficient of X, where we indicated that the coefficient of X was the change in Y when X increases by 1 unit. And then we explain the fact that not all variables that influence Y, which is expenditure, is captured in the model, and therefore to adequately represent all other variables that are likely to influence the expenditure pattern of young graduates, we needed to include an error term, or what is often known as the residual or disturbance. The residual or the error term takes account of all other variables that have not been included in the model but are likely to influence the expenditure pattern of students. So we will look at the data of young graduates in a week, the weekly income of young graduates in Ghana, and then their expenditure pattern that we have. And we will be estimating the effect of income on their expenditure pattern using what we call Stata. So first of all, you would need to have Stata installed on your laptop or your computer, and then you can easily run that. So I have Stata opened on my laptop, and there are different windows of the Stata application. I will briefly explain them, and then we proceed to see how we can apply Stata in the analysis or the estimation of economic variables. So we have the review window. The review window gives you a record of all the commands that you have executed in Stata. We have the results window. The results window displays all the results that you have executed in Stata. As you can see, this application is licensed to Chamber of Methods Consult, and it has the capacity to handle maximum of 5,000 variables, as you can see. So we have the command window, which allows you to type your commands and then proceed to execute. We also have the variable window, which displays all the variables that you have in your data with their labels. So we have the menu at the top. We have the menu that shows you the various actions that you can execute in Stata to get your required results or desired results. So how do you get data into Stata? There are different methods by which you can have your data imported into Stata. First of all, you can directly type data into Stata, but you also have the option of importing data from Excel spreadsheet or data stored in SPSS file or other format. So in this case, we have our data stored in Excel format, and we are going to learn how to import data in Excel into Stata. So first of all, what you need to do is to click on File from your Stata menu at the top, and then you would see Import. you go to Import and select Excel spreadsheet. Once you select Excel spreadsheet, you have the import window open, and then you click on Browse. You see Browse, you have to click on Browse and then choose the location of your data. So in this case, we have our data located saved on the desktop, and here is the data, income data that we'll be working with. So we select the income data and click on Open. Once we click on Open, the data displays in the window. As we can see, we have the expenditure, we have the income. But we want to treat the first row on our data as the variable names. So what we do is to select Import first row as variable names and proceed to click OK. Once we click OK, we now have our data imported in Stata. As you can see, this is the resource that we have just executed. So Stata takes record of that resource and also records that at the command, at the review section of Stata. So we have our expenditure showing here. We also have our income as well showing. So how do we analyze this data? First of all, we want to be sure that the data that was in Excel is what has been loaded onto our Stata application. So what we can do is to go to our data editor or data browser. So we can easily browse the data or go to data editor. Data editor allows you to edit the data that you have loaded in Stata. Data browser just allows you to view the data that you have loaded onto Stata. So in this case, we don't want to edit, we want to browse to be sure of the data that we have uploaded. So we click on data browser or data browse, and it displays to us here the expenditure and income data that we had in the Excel spreadsheet. So we proceed to close that, and then we now want to estimate the effect of income on expenditure as we captured in our model here. So we want to determine how change in income affects the expenditure of students on weekly basis. So what do? We go back to Stata, and we have various options that we can rely on in order to estimate the effect of income on expenditure. So first of all, we can come to our command window and type regress. We come to our command window and type regress, and then we select our dependent variable, which is expenditure, followed by our independent variable, which is income, and then we proceed to click enter. Once we click enter, we have the results of our regression model indicated in Stata, as we can see, and the command that we executed is also displayed here, as well as in the review section of our Stata application. So we would briefly interpret the results that we now have. The results in the results window tells us we had 10 observations. In other words, we had 10 students with their income and expenditure patterns. Now, this is the expenditure that we just estimated. This is the income variable, which represents the independent variable, and the constant here refers to our intercept as we observed earlier. So this is the results that we have. Now we have the coefficient. The coefficient here refers to the intercept and then the slope as we discussed in our earlier model. So how do we interpret this results? What this result tells us is the fact that the coefficient of x, which is income, is 0.50. What it means is that for every 1 Ghana cedis increase in income, we have a corresponding 0.5 pesos increase in expenditure. It is an increase because this value is positive. And statistically, we will want to find out whether this difference or this change in expenditure is significant. So we would either look at the p-value or the t-values. Where the p-value is less than 0.05, which is the error margin at which we are testing our model, then the result is significant. So in this case, our p-value is less than 0.05 and therefore our result is significant. And we want to know whether our model is fit, whether our model is a very good model. And to determine that, we would look at the R-squared value. The R-squared value, where we have the R-squared value closer to 1, then it tells us that our model is best fit. So in this case, we have 0.96, which means that 96% of variation in expenditure is explained by change in income. And that is a very good model. So in this case, our model is a very good model.